Aloha and welcome everybody to another wonderful Soul Talk. I'm so excited with our wonderful guest Staci Wright today. And before we get started, I'll introduce you. Staci is a serial entrepreneur, really amazing. 5 startups with revenues up to 5 million, and has owned more than 16 US and 11 international patents. After a series of events that led to losing her business and marriage, she was forced to start over as a single mom at 47. This time, with nothing to lose, she decided to test life and the limits to see what else was possible. She had sensed that there was more to life than what we know, and after this experiment, she found astonishing and revolutionary truths that have not only transformed the way she does business, but has also equally transformed others in her sphere of influence. She now has 2 businesses, 5 brands, and 3 products. She shares this hard-earned wisdom with others through the online community, helping others uncover who they truly are and live a life that is authentic with power, ease, and joy. Welcome, Staci.
Thank you so much, May. Thank you for providing this opportunity for us to connect and to talk about these important truths.
Yes, I love that so much. We already spoke a little bit before, but I want to, go back into that because I feel it's important to share. And it was in your story, when you lost everything. Tell us a little bit how that happened. Like how were you? What was your state of being at that time?
Well, I'm gonna couch this with like a spiritual perspective of
Yeah.
how it unfolded from hindsight, of
Mhm.
course, looking back and what the way it was. But about 12 years ago, I started really asking for more in life. I really started seeking that, thinking there's more to this. What is there? And I started meditating. So I started a daily practice of meditation. And I started going through the Course of Miracles, which is that has a 365-day lessons that help to deprogram the mind and reprogram it to truth, and eliminate, moving away from the ego and more towards spirituality. So I started that process about 12 years ago. And then a couple of years into that, we got hit with a lawsuit. So at that time, I'll just paint a picture. It was me and my husband had a business. It was a $5 million business. We were doing really, really well on the outside, financially, everything seemed to be going really well. Then we got hit with a lawsuit, and it was a lawsuit from an ex-employee. Then there was a complete and total come apart of my life from that moment forward. So over the course of the next 10 years, there was just loss after loss after loss. So it started with the lawsuit that we ended up losing, then the marriage that crumbled, then the business that crumbled. And at the end of the day, I was left with literally, I had 2 kids. I was a middle-aged single mom, $500,000 in debt, and just really at a loss as to where to go. I had fought for 10 years, and um, and then it was at that moment that I read Michael Singer's The Surrender Experiment. Yes, changed everything, because at that point, I didn't have anything else to lose, and I was tired. I was tired of the fight. I was tired of trying to hold everything together. And so I decided at that point I would have a surrender experiment of my own. And that's when I let go finally. But I think that the 10 years of loss could have been maybe 3 years of loss or 2 years of loss. But because I was so scared, I was so filled with fear, I kept holding on. I kept holding on to everything and trying to hold it all together and trying to put it back together and fighting for my safety and my security. And I think, that was all part of the lesson for me on a spiritual path of letting go and letting life support me and letting, life happen more organically, more naturally. But I was very staunch and resistant to that for the longest time.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I resonate so much because I think 5 years ago someone told me, there's this book, The Surrender Experiment. You should
Yeah.
read it. And
Yes.
I had it in my inbox, not in my inbox. I had it in my Audible because I mainly do Audible. I had it in there I think for 2 years, no, 3 years, until I had my rock bottom, my
Mm,
moment of
yes.
and then after that I actually read it twice. I read it once, sort of to get out of that moment, or
Hmm.
to support that, that moment, probably similar to you. You read it and it's like, okay, okay, I'm surrendering, because it just is not, and then a year later I was like, okay, I think I need to, bring that back
Surrender
into my
again.
mind right now.
Yes, yes, yes,
I feel slipping into another rock bottom.
yes, yes, girl.
And it's so amazing. So for everybody, we'll post the book here in the show notes, because I feel it's an incredible way to see it for someone else. The problem with that is, I mean, one thing is reading the book, but then actually doing it in your life.
Yeah,
And I think you said it earlier, that when you've lost everything, there's nothing else that can happen. And I think why we work is to hopefully not have other people, go down to that rock.
hmm,
I think rock bottom is a good name for, that moment.
yes,
um
yes.
but the grateful thing about that moment, I feel, is like a resignation
Hmm.
with your, with your ego head, that, it's like
Yes,
you've done it and it hasn't worked out at all. So
yes.
now you don't count anymore.
You
Now,
don't get to be the boss
yeah,
anymore.
no, I'm not
Yeah,
listening to you anymore. You can keep on
yes,
babbling, but I'm not listening.
yes, yes, exactly, exactly. And fortunate for me, I learned about human design just a couple years prior to reading the surrender experiment. And so, human design, I love human design because it gave me a practical, tactical roadmap to live in a state of surrender and
Mm.
still do life. Right. Because it's one thing to be like, okay, I'm in a state of surrender. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to make anything happen. But we still live on this plane. We still have things to do. We still have a purpose and things to accomplish. So, how do we do that in a state of surrender? That's been the interesting unfolding. But human design was such a powerful tool in that regard
Yeah.
because it
That's,
gave me a way to make decisions,
yeah.
right? Because it's when we make decisions from our mind, that's the conditioned part of it. That's the ego part of us. If we're talking in spiritual terms, it's the ego part of us. So if we're making decisions from our mind, that's coming from a space of ego. How else do we make decisions, right? And what does that look like to not make decisions with your mind? Because we've been told our whole life, be logical, be reasonable, make a decision based on the pros and cons and what's the best outcome for you. And all of those things, we're trained to use our mind for those things. So how do we do life differently? And
Mm.
that's what I love about human design. It gave me a specific way to make decisions. So that way, then I learned that my yes and no decisions come from my gut. And once that decision's made, then I move to the next decision that comes from my gut. It's following these yeses and staying away from the no's and
Mm.
learning how to register what that feels like inside of my gut and moving towards that.
I feel that so much, because it's like we said, also in the pre-talk, when I encountered human design, you know, one of the things that I love about it, that it's, because it is a little bit of astrology, but it's also the
Mhm.
king, and it's also a lot more, because I mean, nowadays with the gene keys and everything, adding up to it. But it's such a precise way to understand. It's not, that's also one of the things. It's not another, box where you're supposed to fit in. It's actually just explaining to yourself basically who you are and how you function and how you work. And once you understand that, and then we're coming back to the surrender, and once you surrender into your design on who you
Yes.
are.
Yes.
And we were talking about, for example, with the projectors, because we're I have to always wait for an invitation for someone to invite me to whatever, right? And looking back into my life, how many times did, way back when I was still, not self-employed and I had jobs, which jobs worked out good and not, and the ones where I was sort of invited by someone to come to that, job,
Mm-hmm.
those were great. but the ones that I was pushing from my ego, somehow they never worked, they didn't work out properly.
Yes. Yes. It's such a crazy phenomena to understand that, and then to know, oh my goodness, that's my purpose. We each have a part to play. We each have a role to play in all of this humanity, or humanness that we are. And so for you as a projector, you're here to guide us
Mm.
innately in who you are. You have information about where we're headed and how we can get there,
Mm.
but you can't get it from your mind because the mind is conditioned with where we've been.
Yeah.
So it's super important that you know that as a projector, these new ideas that you have and these new ways of doing things and these ways of guiding others, that you lean into that and trust that. That's what's going to get us to our evolution. That's what's going to get us to where we need to go. But if you don't know that, then you're another human being trying to fit in with everybody else and do it the way everybody says to do it. And that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have a purpose to play. You're here to show us a new way to do things. You're here to guide us in the way that we're supposed to be going.
Yeah, and understanding that for yourself. Like you said, the difference between my head or ego that wants to tell me,
Mm-hmm.
and man, I've been through I don't know how many business business schools, online business schools that taught me
Yes.
on how I'm supposed to do my business, and it
Yes.
didn't work. I mean, that's where my first rock bottom came from, because I was trying
Mm-hmm.
to, fit into that, and to come back to that surrender, the moment you just surrender into your own, and I think that counts for almost all of the design. No, actually, it counts for all the designs. The moment
Mm-hmm.
you surrender into, like you said, the decision making tools for
Mm-hmm.
yourself to recognize, is this, because I think if we're going, for our empaths and highly sensitives, a lot of the doubts that they have is this what I'm feeling right? It starts with, can I trust my gut feeling, or is it
Mm-hmm.
really my gut feeling, or is it my head trying to tell me, or the energies I'm feeling right now trying to tell me
Yes.
that I have to go somewhere else? And the thing is of listening, having, because it takes practice to listen to yourself, and then
Mm-hmm.
also a little bit of try and error. But I feel that the
Yeah.
try and error of trusting my feelings was never, it was just a short time. I really knew very fast, like you get really fast this feeling of, this is the right thing to do, or
Mm-hmm.
this is not the right thing to do, or maybe hold on to this a little bit.
Yes, because that is truly who we are. When
Mm.
we come into the world, we're in tune with that, and it's intact, and it never becomes detached from us. It is always there. We're just conditioned away from it. So
Mm.
when we come back to it, we can come back to it relatively easily through experimenting and through trial and error, like you said, paying attention. And then when we feel this way, we go towards it, and then it works out. And then we understand, okay, now next time I feel that way, I know to move towards that. And then there's another time when you're feeling like, oh, I shouldn't go this way, but I'm really need to go this way. So you go that way, and then it doesn't work out. And then you think, okay, I remember now, when I have that feeling, I'm not going to follow that anymore. And so it really is, there's there's not a whole lot of schools out there that will teach you how to get back in touch with that. It's more of an internal experiment and more of an internal experience. And that's why I love human design, is because I heard early on somebody say, don't listen to what anybody says about human design. Find out what your basic truths are about your chart, and then go have your own experiment. And I
Mm.
loved that, because I was a rebel heart, and I don't like listening to other people, and I don't like following other people's advice. And
Mhm.
so when I heard that, it just really resonated with me. And I'm like, yes, let me have my own experiment. And every truth that I've come upon has been a result of my own experimentation and the experiences that have come from that.
Yeah. That's also, yeah, I love that, because that's basically the reason why I'm doing this podcast, the Soul Talks here, because I want to give my audience the opportunity to feel into, by, when we're talking, they're going to have a feeling of how you are, and, and get a
Mm-hmm.
feeling of, I mean, is this the way that I'd like to try things, or not, get inspired
Mm-hmm.
maybe, or
Yes.
maybe someone, or maybe someone else, but they have like a platform where they can actually, try a little bit, feel into
Mhm.
this. So that
Yes.
sounded good. Maybe I'm going to check this out a little bit, and make
Yes.
my own experiences with that. And that's how it's supposed to be. I love that so much. I
Yeah.
think,
Because we each
um,
have our own curriculum. We each have our own unique being, unique things about us that nobody can teach us.
yeah.
And so for me, that I had the same experience, May. It was a little bit from this person, a little bit from this person. And I tried on what this person said, and I tried it on for a little while. I'm like, okay, that part fits, but that part doesn't. So let go of that and then keep the part that fits and then go to the next person. And I just took in reading books and listening to podcasts and listening to people talk. I took in the pieces, and I still do that to this day. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It was a Course in Miracles podcast. And there were portions of it that it was like, yes, that resonates. And then there was a portion of it that doesn't. It's like, okay, that's their journey and that's their truth.
Mm.
And a piece of that fits for my journey and my truth, and a piece of it doesn't. And so I can take what fits and leave the rest and then continue having my own experiment. But we all have our own journey, and it's very unique. And it's crazy to think that everybody does have such a unique journey to take with 7 billion people on the planet.
I know.
But it's true. It's so
Yeah.
true.
And it's beautiful. I mean, on one hand, it's a little bit sad because, the way our society has worked so far, it's always tried to sort of like fit us somewhere all
Yeah.
together in the same. And I don't know if you've seen, is it called a meme or a picture? I think it's gone all over,
Mhm.
I think on Facebook or on social media, where I see this picture of a whole, in the jungle, there's this lion, I think it's a lion trying to teach, a whole bunch of animals, and there's an elephant, there's a rhino, all kinds of
Yes.
different animals sitting there. And then he says, okay, and then the next lesson, we're going to learn how to climb a tree.
Mm.
And so all of them have to learn how to climb a tree, but they're not all made to climb trees. I mean, how's an elephant going to do that? you know
Right.
and,
Yes.
and and keeping that in mind, that we all have this part in ourselves that wants to come out and that wants to be seen as well. And no matter where we are, if we're working as coaches, if we're doing our own business, or if even if when we're part of a company, no matter if it's a huge one or a small one, there's still this part that we can give, and that, if that place resonates with us. Because I mean, we're having so many beautiful startups now that
Mhm.
that are coming up, best because you work with them, that have, beautiful values where we can fit in and we can give our parts to that. But if we
Yeah.
don't allow ourselves to do that, how are we
Yes.
gonna know, right?
Right. Yes. And that you bring up a really good point, is that we live in a society that we've been homogenized. That's a word that goes around, runs around in human design. Homogenization is when we want everybody to be the same. So we all go to the same kind of school and we learn in the same kind of curriculum, and we learn math and English and science. And we grow up and then we graduate school and then we get a job and then we have, so all of these things are, our society says this is how we should do it. And this is what we need to do. And this is how it works. And that's been the way of the past.
Mm.
The way of our future is more of a sovereignty in each individual. It's each individual like finding out who they are and then playing that role for the whole. We still need each other and we still are connected to each other, but it's each one of us being individually who we are that makes it the perfect combination when we all come together.
I love what you're saying because it resonates with something that I don't know if I read it or heard it. It's also about 10 years ago or something, where they were talking of how the perfect world would look like. And
Mm-hmm.
it was about everybody simply following their bliss. So simply following whatever they love to do. And
Mm-hmm.
then everybody, we wouldn't need money because everybody would be, pitching in with everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then and I've had people going like, yeah, but no, who likes cleaning, or who likes, doing picking up trash or whatever. And I'm like, there's people that enjoy that. I love dishwashing, and I love,
Yes.
working, because I've worked as a waitress, and I've really enjoyed, being there and, bringing people joy with their drinks and their food. And I'm like, I would be doing that. And then after a while, go and do some coaching, and then, do some online work for people who like that as well, because those
Yeah.
are the things that I enjoy. And if I could do everything a couple of hours, it's not exhausting. And I would be pitching in, and, if everybody would do that, we would all have enough of everything.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. And I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more and more people gravitate towards growing their own food,
Yeah.
right? And then people trading, like I'll grow zucchini and you grow tomatoes and we'll switch. So I'm already seeing that happen in the society, and it's exciting to see people working together more.
Yeah, and coming in, like we said earlier, really finding out what is it that I like, that I
Yes.
like to do. It's not that linear like it used, like you at 17 or whenever you come out of high school, you find your job, or maybe, do you do college, but after that you find that one job, and that's what you do until you retire.
Right,
That's it.
right.
And I always said I retired when I got out of my corporate job.
Yes, yes, very much so.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. But that's the beautiful thing about human design is it gives us an owner's manual. It says, here's what you're designed to do, right? So as a projector, you're here to guide others. As a 2/4, you're here um, to build your network and bring people together, right? In such a beautiful way. So it's so perfect that you're doing a podcast where you're guiding others and you're bringing together a community.
Yeah.
Um, for me, being a manifesting generator, I'm designed to bring new things to life. I am designed to be building something new and bringing something new, and also be multi-passionate. So I have 2 businesses, 3 products, 4 brands. Like I've got so many things going, but that's correct for me.
Yeah.
And when, as long as I'm lit up about it, then things are moving and flowing, and synchronicities are happening. So the knowing your human design gives you kind of an owner's guide, like this is what you're designed to do and this is what you can lean into. And when you start experimenting with that and you lean into it, you're like, oh my gosh, I am really good at that, let me just do that.
Yeah.
My profile is a 5/1, and 5 is being the leader.
Hmm.
And I always shied away from being a leader because I was shy, and I was didn't want to be out in front of everybody. I think some of that had to do with childhood trauma, right? And being publicly humiliated and things of that nature. But when I leaned into that leadership that I have naturally in my human design, I started experimenting with that. People wanted to follow me.
Mm.
It's crazy to look at people. They were wanting to follow me, and I didn't even realize it. I was too busy pushing that responsibility away. But now that I've leaned into that because that's part of my design, it's such a natural thing. It's such a natural thing for me to do. But I don't know that I would have found that had it not been shown to me through my human design, and that I could really try that on and lean into it and figure that out. So that's why I love human design. It's kind of like a cheat sheet
Yeah.
for how we're designed to be.
Oh, I love that you're, because I resonate with that as well, because in my case back then there was no at least in my field was no human design, but and it really early on my spiritual path, so you go to your shaman, or you go to that person, and they do readings of you,
Mhm.
and they've always had this, you're supposed to lead, you're supposed to teach, you're supposed to be out there. And I've always been like, no way,
Yeah.
no way I'm doing that. But it's similar like you, with the responsibility, with childhood trauma, like who are you, being, trying to stand up in front of people and talk about something, and
Mhm.
then the imposter syndrome, and with everything, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And it took this whole process for myself, to really step into that. And
Mhm.
but the beautiful thing about that is, once we do that, it's it's so freeing, because it doesn't have to do with responsibility. You do have responsibilities, but it's different than what you thought back then. It's a different kind. And it's such a I feel, and maybe you can say that too, it's such a freedom when you start especially in the combination with surrendering to who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and surrendering to who you are, surrendering to the guidance that exists, that is taking care of you always,
Mm-hmm.
and doing that, it's like, it's less stressful, less stress, you're less tense, everything is like that. That's why it feels like freedom, because you're free, to be your true self without having your head telling, being all tense, oh my god, no, you have to do it this way or that way. It's
Right. Yes. Yes, it is. It makes such a big difference. And that knowing that life is for us. Of
Yeah.
course, I didn't know that until I surrendered and
Hmm.
said, okay, you know what? I'm going to surrender. Show me. Okay, life, show me what you have for me. Show me how this works. And then all of a sudden, things just started falling together. Like it was just synchronistic and flow and easy. And I'm like, it's not supposed to be this easy. Like I was taught you had to work hard to be successful. You had to, you had to labor really hard. It wasn't supposed to be so easy. So the hardest part for me in the surrender process was letting go of that conditioning that told me I had to work hard and then I had to make things happen. I always had to be on guard. I always had to be working towards something that was like this nonstop. That was the hardest part for me. And so the hard work for me was going for a walk every day out in nature, sometimes two times a day, because that voice wouldn't stop. And
Mm.
I kept trying to get into action. I kept trying to go make something happen when it wasn't correct. So sitting on my hands or going for a walk or distracting that part of me in a in a positive way was where the hard work was. It's letting go of that conditioning, because that conditioning just wanted me to go, 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 go and make things happen. And now I have some friends who are caught up in that cycle, and
Mm.
they're working really hard and they're exhausted all the time and they're just not getting ahead. And but I can see that motor just running, that motor that says, if you don't do it, nobody else will. And if you don't make this money, you won't be able to pay your bills. And if you don't do the this and that, then it's not going to work out well for you. And it hurts my heart for them that they're in that, but that's where I was too. And I wouldn't have been come out of it had I not done that full surrender and seen it for myself. I've
Mm.
seen it for myself that I I have not had a job since I lost my business. I have not traded my time for money since I lost my business. That was back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
If I hadn't experienced this type of support from the universe, from life firsthand, I wouldn't believe it. And I remember way back when hearing teachers, hearing spiritual leaders talk about this kind of synchronicity and flow and how things would just happen when you surrender. And I would think, y'all are crazy. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. Y'all are just like, I don't know what's going on with y'all. That's just not how it works. It was But going through the surrender experiment myself, having it work for me myself, allowed me to lean into it more and more and more. And like we talked about before the show, it's a layered process.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, okay, now I trust. Now I trust. I got it. And then a month later, it's something new, an experience that draws up some of that old conditioning that's way down in there, and that comes up, and I have to go through the whole surrender experiment again. But each time it's easier because I have the experience showing me that it works out and that everything always works out. And so I
Yeah.
have more and more trust each time I go through that experience.
I started calling that brain thing. I gave it a name. I'm calling it my me, because it's go me.
Yes.
So, and so whenever it comes up now, it's like, okay, I see the me coming up, and I'm like, I do understand, and yes, it's a little bit scary what you're saying, and yes, everything could go wrong the way you're saying it, but didn't we just learn to surrender? Let's just come on, let's just shh.
Yes. Yes. The biggest question for me in the beginning was I would ask that mind, that me. I like that you named it. I would say, what does the evidence show us?
Yes.
What does the evidence show us? The evidence show us that it always works out every time, every time. So having that dialogue with that part of the brain, it's like, wait a minute, though. We're going on evidence. We're not going on the fear. We're going on evidence. What does the evidence show?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I actually learned from my Hawaiian teacher, because she made us from the first day, and that's what I do with my clients as well. From the first day, we're starting an evidence journal. You have
Oh,
an evidence journal of whenever the universe is doing what like is creating or doing the good work for you, so that you know it's there, it's doing it,
yes. I love that.
hmm
What a great idea.
yeah, it's really
That's a
cool.
great idea because then you have a book. You're like, okay, let's go look at the book. What does the evidence show? And you have it written down because
Exactly.
we forget.
Exactly, especially for those moments, so that you can
Yes.
really look it up and go like, okay, now I'm feeling like, oh my God, the world is and it's not gonna work, and I'm gonna lose my
Yes.
job, or I'm gonna lose my clients or whatever.
This
And
is
then,
it.
yeah,
This is the time it's not going to work out.
now it's happening. I'm gonna be homeless, and then you take out that journal, and then you can look. Okay, then okay, okay. And one of the additional things, and that's what I wanted to ask you too, but from my case, what I tell them, when you read that for yourself, ask yourself, how did you get yourself to that energy that you had at that moment from that situation?
Mm,
How what was different than right now? Because I always like to take that, because this is also has to do with surrender. It's manifesting, but it has to do with surrender. Because I know how you manifest your parking spot. I don't know if you know that, how people sometimes try to manifest
yes.
their parking spot,
Yes.
and for some people it works perfectly, and for some people
Right.
it doesn't.
Right.
And for me, for a long time, it was a 50-50 chance, which is basically, I could have just not manifested. It would have been a 50-50 chance.
Right.
But then, because of the whole evidence journal, I started thinking, wait, what did I do so that that happened? And it's this, letting go, saying, okay, I know I'm going to have it. I know I'm going to get my parking spot. There's nothing that can actually make me doubt it or anything. So it's like this complete trust and surrender that the universe has that parking spot for me, and it's
Hmm.
just there. I've never, like, for years I haven't, I know wherever I go I'll have my parking spot.
So you've
And
created that belief that you always get the good parking spot.
exactly. But for me, it's so connected with, with this co-working, basically, really, conscious co-working with the universe,
Mhm.
because I'm trusting, I'm surrendering, I know we're in a good spot, and we'll find our way together, and
Mhm.
sometimes I do need to make an extra round, but I will have my parking spot.
Okay. That's excellent. Excellent. It's interesting that you bring this up because I just I did a post this morning on manifesting. And because I'm still I'm still experimenting with that myself. So I have found that when I get very specific and try to manifest something very specific, it doesn't work out. I don't get consistent results. And then I learned in human design, there's a portion of your chart that will say, are you a general manifester or a specific manifester? So
Ooh.
even that is in our chart. And so when I realized I'm a more general manifester, and I started leaving the specifics out of my request. So then it would be, okay, it's my intention to have power and ease in parking, right? So it's my intention to have power and ease. And I leave the front row parking or something very specific, I leave that completely out. Then I always have the experience of what my intention is. I have it more consistently than when I get very specific. So it's interesting how some people do really well and have consistent results with specific manifesting. And then I never did. So I always thought I must be doing it wrong. I'm not believing enough. I'm not, beating myself up over that. And then when I learned about the general, manifestor versus specific and started experimenting with that, I learned I started having more consistent experiences with it. So it's just a whole interesting topic.
I love
whole
that you're
interesting
saying that it's
conversation.
in the chart. I didn't know. I have to check for mine, but I think from what you're saying, I think I'm a general manifester, because I've tried to go specific, because you know how many coachings you also get on your business coaching and mindset coaching around the whole,
Yes.
thing. So I've had a lot of coaches that have told me, like, you have to, like, write down very specific, like how,
Yes.
and the probably also dates and numbers and whatever. And I've
Yes.
tried, but that never worked. And the moment I just let go and say, okay, dear universe, I want to, I want to have this or that experience. For sometimes it's
Yes.
just about, I want to have that experience, and then
Yes.
it just happens. And it's,
Yes.
I love that magic, that
Hmm.
I'm still in awe every time it happens, even though,
Yes.
I've experienced it so many times, but I'm still so in awe, when I get, for me, it's always, I get signs from the universe, like animals coming by. Like I had one moment where
Hmm.
I was, deciding my head and my intuition, and I went for the intuition, and suddenly, because I was sitting on a balcony in Greece back then, and then suddenly a huge white owl comes to my balcony, sits down, goes like, "Oh, hi," like does this, and
Oh,
then
wow.
turns around and flies away. And I'm like, "Oh my God, did that
Wow.
just happen?"
That's amazing.
Yeah. Because I mean, the time, because it's timing for me, it's timing when those things happen. And it's like, oh my God, thank you, ancestors. Okay, okay, got it. I'm,
Right?
gonna keep
Yeah.
on walking that way. Thank you.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Um, One question, because I know we were talking now about, using the human design chart, but maybe for the listeners that are still working on getting their human design chart,
Hmm.
what would you say would be the first step to surrendering, to get into the surrendering?
The first step I would say is being aware that surrender is an option.
Hmm.
And then the next one is being willing to experiment with it. So for
Mm.
me, and that's the thing I learned in A Course in Miracles. It's like because the Course in Miracles is all about forgiveness, right? And letting go of past grievances. And there were some that were really hard to let go of. And what Jesus said in the Course in Miracles is, um, all you have to do is be willing to see it differently, be willing to let go of it. You don't have to let go of it. You don't have to see it differently. Just be willing to, and then the magic can happen. Because when we let go of the idea that we have to control everything and we say, okay, I'm willing to play with this, I'm willing to let go, I'm willing to take my hands off the wheel and experiment with this, and then invite those your lessons and what can bring you along on the path. So I would say that would be the first step, is just being willing and asking, okay, I'm willing, show
Mm.
me.
I love that, because it's like setting an intention to, we could go that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, dear universe, okay, I'm halfway there.
Yes.
Meet me halfway.
Yeah.
I'm sort of, I'm
Right.
flirting with that idea.
Right. Yes. Yes. Because I mean, it's messy. Life is messy. We're messy humans, right? We're imperfect. We've got all of this stuff going on in our fields and our conditions and our mind. All we have to really do is become willing. And then there is a mechanism of grace that can
Mm.
take us across that threshold that we can't take ourselves across.
I love this, because this applies for almost everything. The moment we, like, maybe for people that are not like our rock bottom yet, but are
Yes.
maybe, having, considering certain ideas, just, tell the universe you're flirting in that
Right.
direction.
Right. Yes. You don't have to go all the way to rock bottom.
Yeah.
You can become willing before you get there and then ask for more gentle lessons. That's a
Yes.
possibility.
Yes.
If you're not too
Well,
hard headed like I was.
although you also said it sort of makes it, and I completely agree with you. It sort of makes it easier to surrender at that moment, because it's
Yes.
like there's nothing else.
Yes.
There's just the only way is either, decide to leave this life, or decide to
Mhm.
change, everything. And
Yes.
that's why
Yes.
it's like you don't have any other option. Is the only
Right.
option is, okay, universe, you go. You do,
Yes.
you do.
Yes. Yes. And I had to get to that level
Yeah.
to let go.
Yeah, but that's the downside. It makes the surrender part easier,
It
but
does.
you have to, like, you have to still go through so much pain and so much,
Yeah.
ugh, so many challenges, and like you said,
Yeah.
the thick-headed part that just doesn't.
Yes.
I resonate with that so much because that was so me, and I'm so grateful that I was able to, and you probably too, to finally, okay, it's like, yeah, you had, it's okay, we can flow, we can become easier.
Yes. Yes. Yes, for sure.
That's so nice. Stacy, one question for everybody that resonated with all that we talked about today. If they want to like work with you, how does working with you look like today? Because I mean, you talked about two companies, and like if
Yes.
someone wants to work with you, what would that look like?
Okay, so I have multiple avenues for people to work with me. I have a company that brings new inventions to life. So if
Ooh.
somebody has a new idea for a new product, we can take it through all the phases of patenting, engineer, design, manufacturing, sales, and distribution. So basically taking an invention to the marketplace. We can help with that. We buy ideas. So if somebody has an idea and they don't want to take it to the market themselves, we will buy that from them. Um, so that is one avenue. The other avenue is through a community for female entrepreneurs. So I have a community called CEO Essentials, and it
Ooh.
is for, yes, it's for women who have a vision for doing business with heart, who have a vision for doing business differently than we've ever done it before. And so there's no, like I said, there's no roadmap to show us specifically how we do business with our heart leading the way instead of our head, because we've been taught to let our logic and reasoning lead the way. So it's a community of female entrepreneurs that are going through that trial and error process. And we're sharing with each other and we're talking about what we're doing and how we're doing it and inspiring each other and helping each other through that. Inside that community, I do teach about human design. I have some masterminds that we do. There's multiple ways to work with me inside that community. The best way to find me is on either Facebook or Instagram. And my handle is on both is the same. So it's stacy.renee.ceo.
Perfect. We're going to put all the links in the show notes so that
Perfect.
everybody knows how to find you. Oh, this was so beautiful, Stacy.
Yes, it
I
was. This has
really
been so fun.
I really enjoyed it. I really love the connection with the surrender experiment because I feel
Mhm.
it's so important. It's actually like one of the very first things that I start off with my clients because I wish that I would have had someone from the get-go to tell me, surrender is like it's 50% of the whole deal. Like if you do
Yeah.
50% and then the other part of the manifesting when you start creating, but the biggest chunk is basically for you to learn to, get into that trust with the universe because it's just,
Mhm.
and it's so beautiful. It's so magical, beautiful. It's hard to put in words, right? When
Yes.
things start happening and synchronicities,
Mm.
like we were talking earlier when you said dates and you have a date, for example, with us we had a date to record the podcast before, and it just didn't work out, or it didn't feel right for that day, and it's okay because it was, for me it was perfect too, because it opened up space for myself too. It's or when I have that with clients, sometimes I would be like, I'm not sure if like I do want to help that person and have the space for them, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be in the right energy for them. And then
Mm.
suddenly I get a message, May, can we move our date, our
Yes.
coaching session for today? And it's like, it just happens by itself. It's like, oh, thank you, universe. Okay, got it.
Yes. Yes. That's beautiful. That's
Right?
beautiful that you start your clients with that,
Yeah.
because that you're right. I mean, at least 50%, maybe more. And that is really the hard, it's not easy to surrender, but putting the focus on that can show you so much more quicker, I think,
Yeah.
than anything. So I think that's a beautiful place to start with people.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
Hey, thank you so much for being here. It was really amazing to talk to you.
it
Um,
was.
do you have like one last message or one last words for our audience?
Mm. I always, when somebody asks me if they have like one piece of advice and what they would to give to somebody starting on their journey. The one piece of advice I always give is something I learned from Louise Hay. Are you familiar with Louise Hay? She helped millions and millions and millions of people heal through the power of the mind and affirmations and the way we talk to ourselves. And she was doing an interview, and this was probably 12 years ago. She was 87 at the time, or somewhere around there. Very saged woman, very wise. She'd been through a lot and had helped a lot of other people through a lot of things. And she said, I used to give one piece of advice for somebody who had relationship issues. And then I had another piece of advice for somebody who had career issues. And then I had another piece of advice for somebody who had health issues. She said, the older I get, the more I realize all of it is one piece of advice. And it's this one piece of advice that if you do this really well, all the other things fall into place. And I was sitting at the edge of my seat saying, tell me this one thing, because I can do one thing. I'm overwhelmed with all the things I need to do, but tell me the one thing. And she said, the one thing is, if you truly learn to love yourself in a deep, deep way, everything else will fall into place. And I took that to heart. And she had wrote the 12 commandments of learning to love yourself. And so I Googled them and found them and printed them out and put them up on my mirror in my car, in my office, everywhere I was, and really took that to heart and really focused on that. And now I can say in hindsight, all of the healing that I've done and all of the letting go and the trust and all of those things would not have been possible had I not laid the foundation of loving myself. So if somebody's just starting on this journey, I would highly, highly recommend that you find those 12 commandments and you commit yourself to that process as a foundational practice. And then everything else builds upon that.
I'm going to try and find them and put them in the show notes for everybody.
Yes,
Those sound
absolutely.
beautiful.
Yeah.
No, I have the healing book that she, with the affirmations for all the, if your body, what your body's telling you about your process.
Yes, powerful stuff.
Thank you so much, Staci. This was really beautiful. Thank you for being part of my podcast.
Thank you, May. Thank you for creating these spaces to have these conversations. It's such an important conversation for us to be having. And I love, love, love seeing you do exactly what you're supposed to be doing as a projector and a 2-4. So go, girl, go.
Thank you very much. And
Yes.
thank you to all our listeners and viewers. For those of you watching on YouTube, thank you so much for being here. And as always, from my heart to your heart, keep surfing your energy wave. Bye, everybody.